Back in my younger days, I was attacked by some kind of creature that disguises itself as human. I know whatever it was that attacked me was evil, right to the core, and if it wasn't for a stranger that was brave enough to defend me, I probably wouldn't be here to tell you this story now. What I'm going to tell you over this email has been something I thought about every day for over 20 years now. I've gone to therapy for it. I've gotten over the fear that I've felt for a decade, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't at least have a fleeting thought of that creature that almost killed me. My name isn't really important for the sake of this story. Just know that I'm a female, average height, on the slender side, not someone that could fight off an attacker by myself. I was 23 years old when this happened in 1999, and it happened in Poughkeepsie, New York. It was on a normal street, in a normal neighborhood that was quiet and peaceful. It happened in a well-lit area, and I've never heard of anything happening there before or since I had my encounter. I was at this party to celebrate one of my friend's birthdays. I'd gone there with a few other friends and my roommate one night, and we were all just laughing and having a good time. I kept noticing this guy staring at me from across the room. He kept smiling at me and then turning away like he was shy or something, and then later I would catch him looking at me again, so I'd smile back, and there didn't seem anything off about him, at first. He was tall, probably a little over 6 feet, and he was pale. He had black hair that was cut short, and he was very attractive. He was dressed well, wore all black, but not in a creepy way. He had black dress pants on and a black button-up short-sleeve shirt. It actually looked pretty good against his complexion and the color of his hair. I was single and wasn't against meeting anyone, so the more our eyes met, the more I smiled back at him. About half an hour of this went by, and finally he came up to me and made a move. The first thing I noticed up close were his eyes. They were this really light blue color that looked like they could pierce right through you. He said hello to me and introduced himself as Michael. He had an American accent, not from New York. More like West Coast. He had this smile that looked like it could knock the boots right off of you, and this air about him. He was just extremely charming. But there was something about him that I didn't like. Like a feeling I was being hunted or something. It's kind of hard to explain. I had these warning bells going off in my head, telling me not to follow this guy anywhere, and to definitely not be alone with him. This dread just came up out of the pit of my stomach, and this fear came over me. It was weird and scary at the time how my body reacted to him, but looking back on it now, it was amazing that my brain just knew something was off about him, and it probably ended up saving my life. I ended up telling him I had a boyfriend, and apologized for sending the wrong signal to him. He was cool about it, told me it wasn't any trouble, and then he walked off. I didn't actually see him again after that. I guessed he left the house and the party. I went back to having fun and had a drink or two with my friends, but not too much to where I couldn't drive home. I was my own ride and didn't want to risk drinking too much and not being able to drive my car home. A couple hours later, I decided to go home since it was getting late and I had to get up early in the next morning. I declined my friend's offer of walking me out to my car, even though she basically insisted on walking out there with me. I didn't want her to have to walk back alone, and it was just a block to my car anyway, so I knew that I'd be fine. I often wonder if that thing would have singled me out and attacked me if there was more than one of us walking to my car. But at the same time, I wonder if he would have attacked my friend on the way back to the party if she did walk me to my car. Thoughts like this can drive you crazy, but there's things I think of all the time like this. As I was walking to my car, I started to get that same feeling of dread coming over me. It was like my body got cold and I could feel the pit of my stomach rising up again. It was that nervousness that you get before you stand in front of a crowd to give a speech, but more in a life or death situation. As I was walking to my car, I was extremely frightened and nervous. I tried to brush it off as my imagination. I kept thinking to myself, well, you are a pretty small woman walking to your car at night. Of course you should be scared. I tried to push it out of my mind, but that feeling wouldn't go away, and I started walking faster and faster to my car. I got to my car and stuck the key in the lock to unlock the door, and that's when Michael, if that's his real name at all, came up to me again. He asked me if he could have a ride home since he lost his own keys, but I declined and told him that I had to get going. He asked one more time, and I told him I wasn't giving a stranger a ride home, especially at night. He seemed irritated, like he wasn't used to being rejected. I opened my door, but he grabbed the top of it and said my name. Only, I never told him my name. I know that he could have heard my friends calling me my name, but the way he said it just sounded like he was taunting me with the fact that he knew what to call me. I tried to pry the door open from his hand, but he was so strong. The next part is the part that has haunted me since then, because his face contorted into this thing right in front of me. It's extremely hard to describe him without reliving that moment, and I'm shaking just typing it now. But here goes. His mouth was wider than it could possibly be. It looked like it was stretched across his whole face. His front two teeth looked normal, but the incisors behind them and the canines looked long and pointed. His skin looked even paler than it had at the party, almost a gray color. His nose stayed the same, very human, but his eyes had this red color on them. It's a color that a human being just doesn't have. I don't know what he was. A demon? A vampire? Maybe they're even one and the same. I don't know. I know in some mythologies they are. I don't even want to know. He grabbed me by my arms as I started screaming. I was absolutely terrified by what I saw and what was happening. I thought I was going to die. He pushed me up against the back door and started making this hissing sound and this low growling noise. His breath smelled like death, like decaying flesh. His mouth was open so wide, wider than a human could possibly open their mouth. I was trying to fight him off. I was trying to beat on his chest with my fists, trying to punch at him, but nothing I did seemed to faze him. All of this only took about 10 seconds from the time he changed to when I was trying to fight back. He was just so strong. I was screaming, trying to call for anyone to help me. He tried to cover my mouth. His hand felt like ice, and he had these long fingernails. They weren't sharp, just long and yellowish. When his hand touched my face, it felt like my whole body dropped in temperature. I even tried to bite his hand, but I couldn't get a good grip. Like saving grace, this guy ran up to help me, yelling at this thing to get away from me. He grabbed that creature around the neck from behind and wrapped his arm around him, but this thing pushed him down like he was a rag doll. Michael took a second to look at this man and hiss at him before he turned his attention back to me. I could see the fear in this guy's eyes, but he still got back up and hit this thing in the head with the bottom of his fist. Michael hissed again and swatted the guy right in the face with the back of his hand. He tried to get in between me and Michael, and tried swinging at him, but Michael just moved out of the way. I heard more noises coming from down the street, and saw 2 more men heading in our direction, asking if everything was okay. I screamed to them that we needed help, and they started running over to us. Michael snarled at me. He actually snarled, just like a dog, then turned around and started to run off. He seemed to drop down to all fours when he ran, almost like Sabretooth in the Wolverine movie. It wasn't human. The 2 other guys reached us and asked if we were okay. I told them that I think we might need medical attention. The guy that saved me agreed, and we ended up at the hospital. He had a broken wrist. There were other bruises and cuts on both of us, but nothing too serious, and we seemed to make it out alive. We filed a report with the police and said that we were attacked, but they seemed skeptical when I started to describe what Michael looked like, and what happened, and how he moved when he ran away. I don't blame them. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't believe the story either, but it did happen, and Michael wasn't human. My roommate ended up meeting me at the hospital, and I ended up staying overnight for evaluation, because they thought I might be in shock of what I had witnessed. I ended up staying with that guy that saved me the next day. I'll keep his name out of it too, and just refer to him as Superman. He was admitted for a possible concussion and the broken wrist. They wanted to evaluate him and do a few more x-rays before they discharged him. We spent hours talking about what happened. At first, I told him I thought I was going crazy, and I described what I saw, but he took my hand and gently told me that if I was going crazy, so was he. As far as he was concerned, he fought off a monster that was attacking me the night before. It wasn't human. It just wasn't human, is what he told me. Me and Superman are still friends to this day. We're very close, and we talk daily, even though we don't live in the same cities as each other anymore. We're both still in New York, and we try to have dinner with each other at least a few times a month. We haven't talked about that night much in a long time, but when we do, you could tell that both of us still get very nervous. It was actually Superman that convinced me to type this up to you. I know you wanted to do something with this story for your 200th episode and actually have me record my encounter in an interview, but I don't want to talk about it. Typing it up on here was bad enough. I don't know what it was that I saw. I don't want to know what it was that I saw. Superman always says it was a vampire. I know there's things out there that aren't human, but I don't know if it's a vampire in the traditional sense. I don't know what I believe. I just know I wear my rosary and never take it off. Thank you for helping me share my story. It's not something that I talk about lightheartedly, and I hope nobody else ever has an encounter with Michael, because if he is a vampire, what else is out there that we think of as just bad dreams?